Hello, I'm Sherrie Garel, and I'll be presenting to you an argument in response to the question: how did the need for a steady supply of water affect the technological, economic, political, and legal development of ancient societies? Ancient societies relied on water for both public and private use, as well as for land irrigation and transportation. Chapter 1 in Discovering the Global Past examines the need for water in ancient societies, showing how this reliance affected development in China, Egypt, Mesopotamia, and Rome, thereby creating a need for a steady supply. Such factors were vital in economic and technological progress, while influencing power and politics. The water systems used facilitated this need and improved economic activity, however, was not without its challenges. Extensive regulation occurred, which shaped the legal landscape and policy. A steady supply of water attributed to the development of ancient societies, yet availability challenged the preeminence of civilizations, affecting technological, economic, political, and legal growth within these regions. Analysis of the primary sources revealed that water was a necessity. Public and private consumption were handled differently. Private consumption in Rome required an application to the commissioner, signed by the emperor. Public use was handled a little bit differently as there were no restrictions on the privilege for water use in public baths. Water was also important for land irrigation and transportation. In source 1, we see an aerial photograph which suggests water was extensively used for irrigation of fields. As you can see, there are ancient drainage ditches and ancient fields below the modern ones. Now, Jairang attested that transportation by water was a benefit of digging canals. Important uses required water systems to ensure availability. There were a number of machines that were used for water lifting. Some were the Shaduf, the Sakaya, a square pallet chain pump, and Noria. Now, each machine has its benefits, especially the chain pump and the Noria. They carried larger volumes of water. The Shaduf, Sakaya, and the square pallet chain pump were all reliant on human labor, while the Noria did not. Now, during the Han Dynasty, Zhao Xinchen expanded the irrigated land by digging canals and ditches and built water gates and dikes in several tens of places. Now, a cleansing basin was used to purify water in Rome. The Claudian aqueduct and the new annual drainage channel were built in Rome, and these were some of the most notable water projects under Emperor Claudius. Now, the need for a steady supply of water also influenced economic activity. As we saw earlier with the water lifting devices, technology was used to build these devices and in some cases could be expensive to develop and maintain. Now, building water systems also required labor, but this was good for the economy. We saw where the Lake Fucine Drainage Canal employed 30,000 men at work at all times for 11 years. Now, at that rate, such a project would cost billions today. Now, water projects also improved availability and increased harvest. For example, Kim became a rich state as a result of the Zengo Canal. Building canals allowed water transport, which provided additional infrastructure to facilitate trade. Now, water use and power were closely tied, and we can see that through the economic activity which developed. A satellite image in source 2 shows an extensive layout that several people owned dikes which were used in agriculture. This is reflective of the preeminence of the areas and the political ruling in dictating these resources, possibly leading to rivalry amongst political systems. Similarly, political rivalry was seen in the building of the Zengo Canal. The original intent was for the state of Han to trick the state of Qin to waste its resources so it would not become so powerful. We can look here on source 3. There is a mace head carving where an Egyptian king is seen cutting an irrigation ditch. This was actually symbolic. It was symbolic of authority under their rule. Such a carving shows water use was closely tied to power. Jai Rang highlighted issues with digging canals to provide advice for political authorities in making policy. Rang analyzed cost effectiveness and benefit to the people. He spoke of enriching the state and making people secure. Now, as water use continued to influence technology, economics, and politics, problems developed, of course. And these problems affected the water supply, some of which were silting and flooding. Now, as we saw in image 1, where those ancient fields and drainage ditches were built, on the top left we can see a thicker black border, and this is possibly just a dike, and that of course would contribute to silting and flooding. And then, even as Jairang mentioned, flooding had other issues associated with it, like a breakout of illnesses. Now, another problem was the inequitable use of water lifting machines, because since some were more advanced in technology, they could lift larger volumes of water, and that could drain an irrigation ditch. For somebody who had like a shut off, they would be left with none. This, of course, would lead eventually to regulation. Now, another issue with water systems was that the land terrain and the distribution was not always able to allow the adequate pressure to come to the local pipes. And theft was an emerging issue, especially in the Roman Empire. Now, legal aspects, including like the code of Hammurabi, were implemented, and it imposed penalties for irresponsible use of water systems, which enforced grain payment for farmland which was damaged due to broken or neglected water systems. Inequitable use of water lifting machines would eventually require regulation, and Zinchen developed some regulations for equitable use of water distribution. In concluding, I must say it is evident that a steady supply of water attributed to development of ancient societies, as this need fueled several infrastructure and technology systems like the Zengo Canal, Claudian Aqueduct, and the New Anio Channel. These societies harvested rivers and built water systems to improve economics, which aided development and saw preeminence over the decades. To improve economics, which aided development. Now, archaeological evidence and satellite imagery alluded to this early existence, with striking similarities to present-day activities. Challenges resulting from this need were noted to influence social, economic, political, and legal cultures while facilitating a steady supply of water in Rome, Egypt, Mesopotamia, and China, dating as far back as 3100 BC.